Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
You're listening to Binjang 91.5, and I've got on the phone in Studio 2 Matthew Dickerson, the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, fresh out of the monthly council full meeting. Hello, Matthew.
How you going, Tony? Yes, it was a late council meeting last night. I think we didn't get out of the building till almost 9 o'clock, but good meeting, lots of good discussion, lots of good debate. So always good to see democracy in action, Tony.
Well, that's definitely so. Now, I understand that you did have a discussion with the CEO of Squadron Energy in Dubbo. I know this is a little bit beside the results of the meeting we just discussed, but I thought that would be a good lead-in to it.
Sure thing. And it's exciting at the moment. We've got lots of people talking about renewables, obviously, proponents that are passing through Dubbo, different people that are discussing what's happening, ministers, etc. But the CEO of Squadron Energy, Jason Willoughby, was in Dubbo and was keen to meet with me. So I sat down, had a coffee with him and just talked about some of the vision that we have for this region. I think this region is going pretty well in terms of realising that the change from coal-fired power to alternative sources is happening. So if it's going to happen, why not take advantage of it? So he was pretty keen to hear about that. And I actually got the feeling that it wasn't like a normal organisation, large organisation, where they just want to look at the bottom dollar. I got the feeling that Squadron certainly want to make sure they're good corporate citizens as well, and just really discussed a whole range of things about how they can leave some sort of lasting legacy, how they can increase employment in the Wellington area, how they can really make a difference to the Wellington community. And sure thing, they'll produce some power and they'll produce some energy, but they're an important player, Tony. If you looked at all the 37 projects that are in operation or are proposed for the Central West Orana Renewable Energy Zone, there's about 11.5 gigawatts of power generation and storage there. Squadron accounts for over 1 gigawatt of that power. So they're a pretty important player in the whole scheme of things.
Yes, they certainly are. Now, Matthew, getting back to the meeting now, or should I say even again a little bit before then, I was reading in the Wellington and District Leader how you were somewhat concerned about some moves, which, well, it appeared to be some moves anyway, to start looking at reducing the number of community committees, which you were saying, well, that's not a good idea because we need to engage the community as much as we possibly could. So what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, you're right, Tony. I did have a little bit to say about that particular concept. Back in January last year, when we first got onto council, we all came forward with different ideas for what we wanted to do, brand new council. And one of the concerns certainly was the fact that the last council had disbanded basically all the community committees. I can't remember if there were many left at all. There might have been one or two. And so Councillor Ivey brought forward a notice of motion to say, let's go and put together some committees. Let's put a workshop together and put together some community committees. Out of that workshop and then a subsequent notice of motion from one of our other councillors, we ended up with 17 community committees. And as that developed, we had another resolution come forward to say just about the terms of reference and a few items, and also to review those committees in October 2023. Now, an important part here, Tony, was, as you would have read in the local paper, that first resolution from Councillor Ivey said that the committees would be formed for the term of council. Now, of course, that goes through to September next year. The report from the staff said we reviewed some of these committees and some of them aren't working fantastically, so we should get rid of a few and reduce that number. That'd be better for staff and be better for the community as well, because there'd be not the time wasting that's involved with these community committees now. There were a few issues with that, and councillors certainly weren't happy with that concept. And it's a really important thing, Tony. Some people say to me, oh, the staff said to do that, or the staff made that decision. The critical thing is that the staff don't make the decisions. Councillors make decisions. Staff made recommendations, and in this case, they recommended to remove a number of committees, but councillors said, no, these are important. If some of them aren't working correctly, some of them could be better. Let's work on the terms of reference. Let's work on the engagement. Let's make these committees better rather than just let's get rid of them. And the expression I used in that particular article you mentioned there was to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that would have been the case. So we've got this wonderful information now. The resolution from council was to continue on with those same 17 committees, sure, look at the terms of reference, look to refine them. In fact, the next meeting of each of those committees, we recommended just a little mini workshop at the beginning of the committee meeting to say, what can we do better? How can we better engage with you? But that's the crucial thing, Tony. I think that engagement is so important. So let's make sure that we are engaging with the community and give them every opportunity to engage rather than reduce the number of opportunities for them to engage with us.
Well, the feedback I get from the community is you're on the right track with that. So were there 17 committees retained, or were there any changes to the number?
All 17 were retained, and you might argue that some of those maybe aren't serving a great purpose, but we thought we'd rather keep those committees as the original resolution from Councillor Ivey in January last year, keep them on till the end of the term and then have a review of those committees at the beginning of the next term and let the new group of councillors set the direction they want for community engagement.
Yes. Well, now, the council did consider, they had recommendations, or they made recommendations in relation to some grant programs, and tonight you decided on those. So I believe Binjang had a bit of a win there too.
Binjang did have a bit of a win there. One of the things that was interesting was that there was an administrative error in the process that we went forward with those committees. And so one of the things that happened when we came through those committees was that the recommendation from our staff was not to fund Binjang out of all those different funding arrangements in place, not to fund Binjang because in the papers it said that the acquittal process hadn't been completed by Binjang for a previous funding round that had been received. And in further discussions with our staff and with yourself and looking at those rules in place, there was actually an administrative error there. So Binjang certainly was eligible for that funding. And so there was a change made from the standing committees through to the council where Binjang was given that money. The other change that was made by councillors was to remove the support for the Dubbo Turf Club. And one of the things that was interesting here is that the original recommendation for the Turf Club, which we're talking about $16,000, so a significant sum of money, the original recommendation was to fund them. But when we look back at a traffic committee report, it was recommended to allow them to put some traffic changes in place near the Turf Club, some flashing lights there. And the traffic committee report specifically said that no funding would be required from council. It was to be funded by the Turf Club themselves. Then they went and put in an application for funding. And so marrying those two up, it didn't seem fair that they'd asked for the money without any requirement for council to help them, and then they'd gone along and asked for some funding. So that was removed from the list of recommendations from our staff. And then as far as the rest of them are concerned, a range of funds were given there: Arana Education and Training, Dubbo Legacy, Arana Arts, Boys to the Bush, a whole range of them there in our business papers. But over $100,000 was given out as part of that community fund. So good result, I think, overall, and well done to Binjang.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and thank you for the commitment that and support that Dubbo Regional Council continues to give us. So we always certainly appreciate that. And of course, the community appreciates it because we are the community. And getting on to the next topic, there was a point raised again in the Wellington and District Leader with an article written by Richard Ivey, the Deputy Mayor, and he was citing problems associated with the Dubbo Aquatic Swim Club having a carnival cancelled due to inadequate services being provided or whatever the issues were. Certainly they couldn't run the carnival. He was making the point here that the council, it seemed, were not informed of any problems. Now, I have to say, I've had one of our presenters who goes swimming on a regular basis locally here, who has asked for the email address of the CEO and has written many emails and letters in relation to ongoing problems here in Wellington. And of course, we've had that on the news this week. So I just find it a little bit incredible if the claims are true that it's saying here that the council wasn't really aware of the issues. And I would also like to point out to you that the company that manages the swimming pools have a website where you can make complaints, but apparently the submit button for complaints on their website doesn't work, and when they were asked about that, they gave no answer. So thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Yeah, thank you. There's a number of issues you've touched on there. I'll just
Yes.
try and pick through a few of them there.
Yeah.
Look, it's not ideal at the moment. The way our 3 pools are running is less than ideal. There's no doubt about that at all. And we think there is light at the end of the tunnel. We think we'll get to the end with Belgravia. Belgravia run pools across Australia and New Zealand. This is not the first time they've been managing a pool. We've had good feedback from other locations where they're running pools before we went through that contract and basically signed up the contract with them. So we think there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Part of the problem at the moment seems to be just lack of staffing, and this is a common problem across many Dubbo businesses where they're struggling to get enough staff. There's so much activity, economic activity happening, it's a bit of a struggle. But that doesn't excuse poor communication because those staff can still communicate. I think in relation to the swimming carnival cancellation, again, that's not great from any point of view, but it's not great for that swimming club, not great for Dubbo, not great for our economy. One of the things that I think that Councillor Ivey may have been touching on there was that it seemed a bit disappointing or maybe a bit surprising. There'd been a lack of good outcomes between the swimming club and Belgravia, so we accept that. But they hadn't mentioned anything to council staff or to councillors until after they'd made the decision to cancel the carnival. Because the first thing that I did when I saw an email that talked about cancelling was I rang the person who sent the email and talked about it and just wanted to hear from him about those issues. And I said, well, can we save it? And they said, no, well, we've already informed Swimming New South Wales, we've informed the clubs, so we've made the decision to cancel. And I thought that it might have been nice to, if it was at that point where they're ready to cancel, personally, I probably would have been on the phone to the CEO or to a councillor or to the mayor and said, this is a bit drastic, we're about ready to pull the pin, can you do something to help us out? And again, they might have been going through a process where they wanted to deal with Belgravia and let them sort that problem out. So I'm not being too harsh on that swimming club, but there are those communication lines open. The councillors advertise their phone numbers, their email addresses. I'd be disappointed if someone couldn't get hold of a councillor if they had a problem as big as that.
That's true, you have to admit.
Yeah, but again, look, it's not a great situation. I actually went down to the pool on Saturday and just had a walk around, went in, I paid my money and had a walk around just to have a look, and it was obvious to me that it was understaffed. Everything seemed to be running okay, and there were people there enjoying it and having fun. The temperature of the pool seemed to be right, but it just seemed like it was understaffed. They've actually got the ability to bring staff in from other sites, which is what they've been doing. If it was still managed internally by Dubbo Regional Council, I think we'd be struggling to open some of the pools at the moment, Tony, or open them for the full hours, because we were struggling to get staff last season as well, and it's even worse by this season. We paid out approximately, and this is a very approximate number, hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional overtime last year because we just couldn't get enough staff. So we're paying our staff overtime to keep the pools open. That's not a sustainable business model. And Belgravia are having some of those same issues, but they specialise in this so they can bring in people from other sites.
Yeah, I think everyone would understand that staff shortages are creating problems for lots of different businesses and services. So we have to put that into the equation, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, we hope they'll get it right. Not more than hope. We're having discussions and we'll make sure they get it right. It's in their best interest, their reputation. When they don't have things like a canteen running or a water slide running, that's reducing their income as well. So they don't want to understaff it. There's no value in it for them reputationally or financially to understaff the pool. So again, they're working hard to try and solve the problem as well. But I did talk to someone else from a different business the other day, Tony, and they said they recently advertised for a position in their business. And they said normally they'd advertised a few years ago, they might have advertised and they might have received 20 or 30 applications. They basically ran the same ad in the same locations and they got 0 applications. There is a distinct lack of employees available for any business at the moment.
Yeah, it's a well-known fact that the participation rate of employment in this country is falling. It's no wonder then that the unemployment rate is falling also. Now, Matthew, is there anything else you'd like to add from the meeting?
I did think there was one thing that I thought was great for Wellington and something that I think will really deliver some benefits to the Wellington community. Councillor Ivey brought forward a notice of motion in relation to a REACT centre. And this is really something I think we will see some great activity around Wellington and some great financial activity. The idea here, this is a Renewable Energy Awareness and Career Training, REACT is the acronym there, centre. And
Yes.
we've talked about this a little bit. I've had discussions with Chris Bowen and Penny Sharp, the federal and state ministers for energy. I've had discussion with, Jason Willoughby, the CEO of Squadron Energy, Lightsource BP, a range of different people and different organisations. And the idea here is that if we could have something around the Wellington area that educated people about renewables, that had some activities for them, a visitor centre, a bit like the Parkes Telescope has a visitor centre, the Cooma Discovery Centre has a visitor centre, and training, because all of these proponents keep telling me that training is something they need to do. They need to get lots of people trained up to be able to help with the construction phase. We don't want to build that. We don't want to own it. We don't think it's appropriate for council to do that. But maybe if we had a basic business plan, I'm not talking about spending $100,000 on an external consultant to create a business plan, but a basic business plan that we can hand out to the government, to different proponents, because I think the dream here from Councillor Ivey was for something to be built, this REACT Centre, whatever that might look like, but built from a range of different organisations that might be coming together and all contributing to it. And if we put together a basic business plan, I'm talking about a few pages here, get our staff to do something basic up, where then when I'm meeting with various organisations, I can hand this out and say, here, this would help you and it would help the Wellington community. I actually think this is the next step to seeing it come to fruition. The Energy Minister for New South Wales, Penny Sharp, was in Dubbo last week when she announced the $128 million for this RES, and she spoke to me about the concept of this sort of visitor information centre, this sort of way you might attract people to the area to learn about renewables, because they know they've got to teach people, but also that training. So it's starting to be thought about, but let's crystallise that, and that's what Councillor Ivey did quite well, was bring forward this notice of motion to crystallise the concept.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Matthew, thank you very much for your time today.
Always my pleasure, Tony. Always my pleasure to keep the Wellington community up to date with what's happening at Council.
Fantastic. And we've been speaking to the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson. Thanks very much, Matthew.
Thanks, Tony.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.